Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about, is Pathfinder struggling? It's a very, very important question, especially now with Pathfinder 2e coming out, all right? So let's talk about it. The reason I'm going to talk about this today is I had a wonderful, wonderful comment from a viewer named AZ, A-A-Z-I-A, AZ, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And AZ came in and said, so I said in Pathfinder 2, in a video on Pathfinder 2e, that Pathfinder and Paizo were struggling, right? So I'm going to start talking about Pathfinder Pathfinder is the #1 product of Paizo. Everything they do launches out of that product, pretty much. So I'm going to start saying Paizo, but everything I say really also I believe is true for Pathfinder generally, okay? All right, so Paizo, Pathfinder, are they successful? This is a really good question, I think, and this is a valid question, right? My statement is yes, without a doubt, Paizo and Pathfinder is struggling, right? Well, one of the things that AZ says, hey, look at Paizo, look at Pathfinder, look what it's doing, look at what Paizo is, Paizo doesn't need to be, I'm going to try to summarize AZ's points. He said, AZ, he or she said that, AZ said, Pathfinder doesn't need to beat the D&D brand to be successful. Pathfinder, what has Pathfinder allowed Paizo to do? Well, it's allowed them to have 24 full-time employees, approximately. Check, 100% true, right? It's allowed them to launch new games, and all their games go directly into Barnes & Noble. That is one of the biggest signs of success today in today's market. Check. Give that point to AZ, okay? All right. Now, why do I say that Pathfinder is absolutely, without a doubt, struggling? Right? Here's why. Because of the bar they set for themselves. Okay. Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition, right? This is between like the years 2008 and 2014, okay? So what happens? Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure 2014 was when 5th edition came out. I hope it's not 2012. No, it couldn't have been, right? Okay. 2008 to 2014, you're talking 4th edition, right? So 4th edition comes out, and Wizards of the Coast is just staggering, right? 4th edition has been rejected by half the community. Half the community likes it, and they're staggered. They have sundered their entire community, and they are low, right? Well, Paizo waltzes in, prints Dungeons & Dragons 3.75, which is the real name, in my opinion, is the real name of Pathfinder. It's exactly what it was. And they just start eating WotC's lunch, right? And they just danced. They never danced on Dungeons & Dragons' grave. They danced next to it. The hole was dug, and they were doing a jig. Now, why do I say they were doing a jig? Here's why. ICV2, okay, ICV, which is this it's this market industry monitor for tabletop games, board games as well. They actually very specifically verified that there was a period of time where Pathfinder outsold Dungeons and Dragons. And to my recollection, I remember this, the writers for Paizo and Paizo itself publicly acknowledged this within their own company communications, right? That to me was them saying, hey, we are here for all of it. We want the whole ball of wax. Pathfinder will be the new Dungeons & Dragons. Pathfinder will surpass Dungeons & Dragons. We are here to compete, not an also-ran, right? There's tons, there's well over 1,000 tabletop role-playing games, and I'm telling you right now, I'm not kidding, there are well over 300 amazing, top-notch tabletop role-playing games. More than anyone could ever play in a lifetime. The cream of our industry is more than anyone can play in a lifetime. And Paizo threw down their gauntlets, you know, like in a hockey fight where two goons go at it. You know, Paizo threw off the gloves, and that's just it. I recently learned about hockey, right? In hockey, those players punch each other in the face without gloves. But there are rules to those fights that happen in hockey. One of them is hockey players don't fight until they both throw off the gloves. And when Paizo said, Pathfinder just outsold Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition, that was throwing off the gloves. And so they entered the arena with Dungeons & Dragons. So now I say they're struggling because because Paizo beat the living crap out of Wizards of the Coast. Pathfinder beat the living crap out of Dungeons & Dragons with 4th edition. Knocked them bloody. Okay? But now, 5th edition came out, and it wasn't even a fight. 5th edition slaughtered Pathfinder, and is still doing it today, to the point where that is why you are looking at Pathfinder 2E today. You're looking at Pathfinder 2E because Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition came into a boxing match and started throwing, you know, and just went full martial arts. Like, it wasn't even close, right? And it shouldn't have been, right? The reality is Pathfinder's a fine game, but Dungeons & Dragons is Dungeons & Dragons. It was created by Gary Gygax. It is Americana. It is Americana. It transcends the tabletop role-playing game community. It is baseball. It is jazz. It is comic book superheroes. This is a unique American creation. Pathfinder is just an iteration. It is not an innovation of an entire form. Dungeons & Dragons is an iteration of an entire form, a game, right? It is a new genre of game, right? Pathfinder is just an iteration, right? But Paizo, and I have mad respect for Paizo. Paizo said, this isn't some game that was created by, one person in their garage. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't one person's imagining. This isn't a heartbreaker tabletop role-playing game. We are gunning for everything. We want the whole industry. We want to be number one. We want to surpass Dungeons & Dragons for decades or centuries, right? And they went for it. They went for the whole ball of wax, right? They went to be king of the hill, right? And that's the part why I say now, Paizo doesn't get to step back and rewrite and redraw the line in the sand, right? They went to beat Dungeons & Dragons, and Dungeons & Dragons had to end 4th edition, create 5th edition, and then come back and take back what was theirs. Because Paizo was a threat to Dungeons & Dragons' existence, right? People forget. Dungeons & Dragons was bought as a side product with the extra money from Wizards of the Coast. Real cash cow, which still is his cash cow today, Magic the Gathering, right? Dungeons & Dragons still is not understood by the world as its real, true value. It is Americana. It will change America for centuries to come, right? And Paizo went for them. They went for the juggler, right? And now, them going into Pathfinder 2E says, we lost. We are done, right? In this competition, right? And basically they've been beaten, right? And here's my issue. I have mad respect for that. I have mad respect for going against a Titan and getting beat down, right? Because frankly, a lot of other companies don't even have the cojones to step forward like that, right? And Paizo did, right? So they lost. Dungeons & Dragons is exactly where it should be. And one other thing I just want to talk about before, so Paizo drew the line and said, we are competing directly with Dungeons & Dragons. So now that they have lost, I say they're struggling. Now, where do I give them credit now, right? They're still one of the top tabletop role-playing games in the companies in the world. But the point is, that wasn't their goal, right? I don't think their goal was ever to be Paizo, especially when they saw that they had beaten 4th edition, right, and outsold Dungeons & Dragons. I think they were going to be the number one They were trying to be the #1 tabletop role-playing game company in the world. I'm not sure there's any TRPG company that has ever actually attempted to do that, other than Paizo. Paizo got beat. They failed, right? Pathfinder is a sub-game now. It has been utterly dominated by Dungeons & Dragons, but at least it tried. It tried, right? And so I really feel like that, and that's the issue, is for Pathfinder, its competition is to beat Dungeons & Dragons. Its competition is no longer to survive and employ 24 people full-time and have a building and do the regular things you would regularly do. It's just they put themselves in a different arena and they got knocked down. They got bloodied, right? Now, last thing I'm going to say is mad props to Mike Mearls, because Mike Mearls is the one who came back. And Mike Mearls, I'm telling you, like, that dude, I hope this isn't mean. He's just one of the most doughy, vanilla-looking people I've ever seen. He does not look threatening. He is an absolute TRPG designer beast, right? I honestly, no, Gary Gygax is king. He invented the game. It's Gary Gygax. It's Mike Mearls. Period. Nobody. Jonathan Tweet, Hainsu, Moldvay. Nobody can even carry Mearls' lunch. What he did with 5th edition is unprecedented. He saved the game. And now with Pathfinder 2e, there's people who are forgetting what actually happened, right? Paizo went for the whole ball of wax. They went to be #1, to put Dungeons & Dragons in the ground, right? And I think what they thought might have happened is that they would start selling like crazy, buy Dungeons & Dragons, and then maybe do whatever they want with it. And people think, oh, just buy Dungeons & Dragons. That's what happened, right? 1993 came out with Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast earned in about 5 years the amount of money it was necessary to purchase wholesale Dungeons & Dragons. People think Dungeons & Dragons is safe. It's not, right? Mike Mearls saved the game, and there's a lot of important history, right? And if people think I'm making too much of it, I'm telling you, this is Americana. This is the history of America, right? Now, these guys are Mike Mearls, Gary Gygax, Paizo, all the writers of Paizo, the designers, the main CEOs, and it's interesting, I don't even know their names, primarily because it's an iteration. I always saw it as an iteration, so I never even bothered to take the time to really study them in depth. But I will give them mad props for what they attempted. And to my knowledge, they're the only game that's ever done it. They're only a tabletop role-playing game that's outsold Dungeons & Dragons even for an instant. So my point is, Pathfinder is struggling now because they drew the line in the sand and they went to beat Dungeons & Dragons. Their goal was never to be and also ran. I got mad respect for what they did and what they accomplished. And I got mad respect for getting beat down, man. If you just sit on the wall and watch, who's going to know your name, right? But the reality is everybody knows Pathfinder within tabletop role-playing game. And now 2E's coming out. I'm really curious what's going to happen with it. But I just wanted to say, Pathfinder's struggling, and the reason why is they set the goal of beating Dungeons & Dragons, and they lost. And so when you step up and you try, to be #1, and then you lose, right? There was a point where Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons & Dragons had to stand by and put their eyes to the ground while Paizo and Pathfinder raised their fists to the sky. Well, today, if you're going to swing for the big dogs, if you're going to swing for the fences and really try to defeat the #1 tabletop role-playing game in the world, you got to take your lumps when the lumps come. And now it's time, and in my opinion, for Pathfinder, the lumps have come. 2E is it is the nail in the coffin that Pathfinder has been fully defeated by Dungeons & Dragons. It absolutely can compete with almost any other tabletop role-playing game in the space. They have an incredibly good company, but when they went toe-to-toe with D&D, at the end of the day, because of Mike Mearls, Dungeons & Dragons beat down Pathfinder and revenged itself. That's my take. All right.